Welcome to the first episode of Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe in 2026. We kick off the year with a discussion on managing waterhemp. Ben shares info on boron trials, soybean row spacing analysis, and smart KB trials from Brandt's Research and Development Results book. And hear about what we are seeing in the fields this time of year.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars. We have Ben, Dylan, and Lynn, and this is the first episode of the new year, 2026. So let's start it off, and then at the end, I'll bring you up to date on a few other things that we're going to talk about for next week, which is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, this came across my my desk this past week. University of Illinois confirms first U.S. case of glufosinate-resistant waterhemp, raising concerns for Midwest farmers. So this article comes from Brownfield, and we can link it if you guys would like to take a look at this article yourself. There's about a 5-minute snippet where the interviewer from Brownfield actually, there's the audio interview. So basically what the nuts and bolts on it is they have 4 confirmed populations, and this is not in like testing sites, it's actually out in growers' fields. They have 4 confirmed populations. One of them is in Champaign County of water hemp that is resistant to glufosinate. Glufosinate is more commonly known as Liberty or Liberty Ultra, or there's some generics that are out there like Cheetah or Interline. You know, there's a ton of them out there.
My unofficial feelings about weed resistance seems like after 20 applications, that's when in other words, if you're not doing a good job actually killing the weed, you know, you're starting to build up those populations. And that's the way it worked with Roundup. It doesn't surprise me, but with glufosinate, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but if you have really tall glufosinate, that's one of the things that contribute to them it coming back, but it's a week to 10 days later if you didn't kill it, spray it again.
Yeah,
so that's let it green back up.
Correct. That's one of the ways that we can combat hard to kill off-label water hemp. And the problem with water hemp is there's so many different growing points. Each different node that's coming off of that plant is a growing point, and because Liberty glufosinate is a contact killer rather than being systemic, you literally have to get coverage on each individual growing point, and sometimes that means that you have to get that herbicide clear down to the ground, clear down to the very lowest growing point that it has there, and that's very difficult to do when you have water hemp that's 6, 8, 10, 12 inches tall, and there's obviously fields out there that are much taller than that, where guys are trying to combat this. So Dr. Hager goes in and talks about, you know, this is why coverage is key with gallonage. So this is something that we've talked about on Cup of Joe probably 100 times, but using that 20 gallon per acre, making sure your pH of your herbicide solution is in the acid range, that definitely helps the Liberty work on the water hemp.
AMS, right?
Yep, using the water conditioning agent, that definitely helps as well, and making sure that we have high pressure. So being able to go in and fog in at a higher pressure than what you would do with like a systemic style gets the droplet sizes smaller and allows it to get down into the canopy better. So following all those things, it's going to be very, very important to making sure that we're getting the weeds killed with Liberty, because it is actually probably the biggest hammer that we have. We've seen where you get off-label applications, off-label weeds of these water hemp species, and like 2,4-D isn't a silver bullet by any stretch of the imagination. Liberty, I believe, it's my own opinion, that Liberty is the hammer that is definitely carrying the weight. The combination of Liberty and Enlist together is the best tool that we have for killing these water hemp populations, but I think Liberty is doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Well, keep in mind that water hemp weed grows as fast as a corn plant. We know how fast a corn plant can grow, 2 to 3 inches a day. So that's why I think we get behind the 8 ball, is because, we see the weeds out there like that. We think, well, we got to next week, and by the time we get out there, they're this tall. And then if you miss one growing point, it's going to come right back. So layered residuals, multiple modes of action, do everything you can, because we're running out of options if we other than wheat. You plant wheat, you don't have water hemp.
Right, because of the shading effect.
Shading effect.
So yeah, that was one thing that came across. I'll be curious. They're going to be releasing more information that they said in that audio clip, where these populations are, probably a county or a town, and there's just more information that's coming out. But this is the first thing that they wanted to release.
And it can spread into your fields from your neighbor's field because of the pollen, because there's male and female water hemp plants. So if the male is resistant, it will spread the pollen over to the neighboring field, and all of a sudden you got resistance, and you've maybe never even used glufosinate in your field.
Correct.
Seems like every year we always get calls or like questionings of, well, we have kind of cooler temperatures in the morning. We don't want to be, we need the heat and everything for Liberty to really work at its best. But then it warms up so fast that now guys, they question, well, now my soybeans, they have to metabolize everything. I'm going to try to wait till a cooler day. Well, then like everything, it grows so fast. You just, by waiting 2 days, when you think maybe you're looking at the forecast, there's a cooler day here and the afternoon is going to be 80 instead of 95. I'm going to go get it then. That could be your 2 days of from 4 inches now to where it's even harder to get with everything else growing around it. It's that much harder to control.
Liberty is one of the hardest, in my opinion, is one of the hardest ones to manage, just because of the facts of what you talked about. I mean, all the things you talk about making Liberty work are all the things that then work against it on the other side. So it's in my professional opinion, it's the one that we've probably seen guys manage the worst from a utility standpoint. They want to skimp on the gallons because they want to pair it with potentially the use rate of 2,4-D, or they want to just cut the volume because they want to haul water all the time, or they don't want to use the correct pressure because they're just afraid of drift or whatever that reason may be. But there's a lot of things that make it really useful, but then there are also some, I wouldn't say side effects, but detriments to following that. The guys want to kind of cut corners, for lack of a better term. So this isn't, to be honest, this isn't surprising at all, just because of that use of the product, or the required use of it. And if you're not using it correctly, it definitely, we've seen them, they curl up and they turn around and come right back up. So not surprising, but it definitely is going to be one we need to keep an eye on, because as we look for herbicide post options, to your point, that's the hammer in the toolbox that if we lose that,
back to cultivators.
The cultivator, or going, I guess, an alternative route of some of the electronic or electric style zappers, or the worst one, the weed hook and your 2 feet.
Yeah, and to Dylan's point on the heat and humidity, anytime we have heat and humidity combined together, I think the goal is to be right around 160. It's either 140 or 160 between the two. So you want at least an 80-degree day with 80% humidity, or some combination, because the Liberty works really, really well at killing the weeds when you're hot and humid out. So take advantage of those hot days, take advantage of those humid days, and make sure that you're attacking water hemp when it's really small, because that's when it's the easiest to control, for sure.
And that's why guys hate it with Enlist, because Enlist at those temperatures makes the beans really lazy and they look kind of bad. But I mean, you just kind of have to take a vacation and go away for a little bit, because they'll come back. But
the droopy leaves,
we had that same thing. Ben talked about it in his post-harvest meeting. I went and sprayed Enlist in the morning, and then they looked pretty floppy. I don't know what the heck I did to them. A few days later, they looked just fine. So
there's actually some data that I've seen between 9 and 3, they call banker's hours, is the optimum time to spray Liberty. In other words, it still works ahead of that and a little bit behind it, but optimum is 9 to 3, and that's the heat of the day for the most part.
Correct. Another thing that I had in here kind of ties back to an episode that we had 3 or 4 weeks ago, talking about some of the Meristem foliar PGR style products and some of the advantages that those have, and we presented yield data from Western Illinois on that episode. But this was going through, I was trying to find Brandt's 2025, their research and development. They usually put out a really, really nice book on their 300-acre farm that they have over in Springfield, Illinois, Pleasant Plain, Illinois. And this is from their 24 book, but it goes back and highlights what we were talking about. They did a boron trial on corn at VTR1. We all know how important boron is. It's the uptake curve for boron at the V10 to V15 timeframe is key, because that plant is really pulling lots of boron in. Boron is extremely important for pollination and kernel retention. But this goes to talk about their cross-link technology that we talked about in that episode. So they used 8 ounces, half a gallon, and a gallon of 10%, typical 10% boron, and they were seeing this is a super high yield environment. So you're talking 305 bushel an acre is the untreated check. They saw a 3 bushel yield increase at 8 ounces of 10% boron. They saw a 3.3 bushel yield increase at a half a gallon, and then a 1.2 bushel increase at a full gallon of 10% boron. You add the cross-link technology and you put a pint of their Smart B, which is included in the NKBS program. They saw an 8.5 bushel increase there. The Smart BMO, which is also be in addition to, so that's molybdenum added to their boron. They saw an 11.2 bushel yield increase there. And by the time they put the potassium, boron, and molybdenum in, which is just a portion of the NKBS that we sell, from Meristem, it's a 14.6 bushel yield advantage. So that goes back to boron can get tied up in the cell walls. It doesn't get into the phloem correctly. Go back to that episode from 3 or 4 weeks ago and we can definitely dive into that. But this is more data that backs some of the things that we were talking about.
I hate to speculate, but I'm curious this year on what you said. I bet they have just as good, if not even higher results.
Oh, absolutely. They were kind of in the area. They weren't quite as dry as what like Champaign County was. So I know that the fungicide results vary based on where you're at. But in the areas that did get the more rainfall, we've talked about how potent fungicide was this year. And I firmly believe that products like Harvest Shield, Homestretch Harvest Shield Complete, and the NKBS product definitely help those fungicides work better, keep the plant healthier. They even put it in their tech sheets. So. The next sheet that I wanted to highlight from that same program is a 20-inch and a 30-inch, so row spacing analysis, and then they have it broken out into different populations that they're looking at, anywhere from 80,000 to 160,000. This is something that we talk about quite a bit, that growers with the seed treatments that we have today, especially the Merschman Starting Line and Starting Line Plus, growers don't need to be planting the heavy populations that they've been used to. You can see the trend at 160 or even 140. It looks like they're actually hurting themselves in 20-inch rows and in 30-inch rows. You don't need to be planting quite that thick a population. So they do a one-pass program at R1, and then they do an R1 and R3, and then they do a R1, R3, R5. And what they have in these applications is a fungicide insecticide, followed by their Smart Trio and their Smart KB, which are similar products to what we would have in our NKBS. And they're really seeing some nice returns on the studies that they're looking here. So at that 80,000 plant population, when they are doing this 1-pass, 2-pass, 3-pass program, similar to like what Alex Harrell is doing, like setting records and things of that nature. They're seeing a 19 bushel yield response going from 88 bushel an acre to 107 bushel an acre. At 100,000 plants per acre, you're looking at 83 to 103. That's a 20 bushel yield advantage. And then the yield advantage kind of starts to take a step back once we get into the higher planting population. So the guys that are really pushing 80 plus bushel yields, it seems like they're able to manipulate the yield at that lower population, and that's something we've kind of talked about before here as well, that these super high yielding guys are really making these changes at a lower population. And I think that has to do with the plant physiology, the ability to retain pods on these nodes, because the plant have a little bit more room and there's less stress from crowding. That we don't need to be planting soybeans as thick as we are, is kind of what I'm getting at here. So just another slide from what they had from 2024 on these multiple applications for the guys that are really trying to be extremely progressive and yield, or getting high yielding soybeans. And I think those are positive return on investment, 20 bushel an acre for a 2-shot, 3-shot program in your soybeans.
Plus, you look at equipment management from that standpoint. If you're a guy that has 2 planters, and management from a personnel standpoint is not working out great with you. Plant your corn in 30, plant your beans in 30, and then just ride around in your sprayer a little bit more rather than having 2 planters. But time plays a factor in getting the crop in. But we're seeing, like you said, between the physiology changes that we're seeing coming out of the genetics, these 2.0, 2.5 style plants are really are now able to put on branch pods and retain them especially at the lower levels. You know, we were talking probably 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I had personally some beans that we did a really, really good job of building a super plush, high yielding plant. At the end of the season, we weren't able to get the rainfall to basically fill that out. So there was that potentially a yield detriment when it came to that. Part of the problem with that, and you just talking, just ring the bell, 155,000 planted population, probably down into the 130, 140. Too much crowding, not enough real estate there for nutrient water uptake. So, you know, when we manipulate this and we're doing all the things on the front side, we do have to remember the back side as well. And I think population is one of the keys on the back side. If we're going to be a little bit dry, a little bit lower population there, our water holding capacity is able to be matriculated out to help the plants that are actually there.
Right.
Rather than just having, you know, a vegetative alfalfa plant essentially out there.
Right, and that's I think there's definitely a key, because the guys that are pushing the yield envelopes are doing it at lower planting populations. So that's something that I think everybody can take away. All of our listeners can take away, that, you know, you can step, and this is coming from a seed company, you can step that population back and not lose anything, but it allows you to use foliars and PGRs to push the envelope, because at the lowest planting population at 80,000, it seems like we can get more consistent results out of our foliars and PGRs that we're using in the reproductive space. So.
Just a side comment, you know, in the breeding side of MS Tech, you know, you're basically, you take pollen from one flower and you cross it over to pollen from another flower, and you create one pod, and then so you got 3 beans, you know, and then those 3 beans go to South America, and if you can look in our seed guide and see how the process goes. But at some point we start planting them, and when we do plant them, we plant them at 6 pounds per acre in 20-inch rows, which would be, you know, if it's 3,000 seeds per pound, it would be 18,000, and they'll still yield about 75% of normal yield with weed control. So I'm not suggesting that, but what I'm telling you is that the soybean plant is very able to basically catch up, or whatever you want to call it, be able to get back a lot of yield potential with those branchings and different things. So I like I say, I'm not afraid if you're looking at costs, because over the years, there's always somebody that's got cheaper seed, and we always say, well, just plant the same number of dollars of our seed per acre, and you'll have a higher yield. And the reason why is because of our seed treatments, our seed quality, and at the end of the day, that population, like you discussed, if you're 10,000 one way or 20,000 the other way, there's not a whole lot of difference. But we have seen in drier years, when you have too many plants out there, that it costs you.
Yep, and a real life example of that, Eastern Iowa, central Eastern Iowa this past year, Brian Reganator, our rep for that territory, was in some fields that looked like they potentially needed to be replanted. And he was in a lot of 65, 70, 75,000 plants per acre. And a competitive rep was like, gotta replant them, gotta replant them, gotta replant them. So the competitive acre got replanted. Our acre did not get replanted, and we were 10 to 15 bushel per acre higher yielding. So we definitely don't need those higher populations. If you have a even consistent 60s, kind of my number, 50, I've glanced at 50s before, but if you have a consistent population in that 60, 70, 80,000, replanting is definitely not necessary.
Yeah, there's the Crops and Soil magazine from early 80s, they'll say in print 40,000 is where yield reduction starts on soybeans if you have weed control.
Correct.
Which, Ben, when you say those numbers that you're saying, you're still got plenty of safety.
Absolutely.
But the key is weed control, because I always say sunlight's never wasted. So when you don't have canopy there, you have sunlight, you're going to have water hemp. I mean, that's just the way it works. So weed control, you end up maybe have to up your weed control a little bit when you have thinner stands.
Liberty would work really well with those populations.
Yeah, you wouldn't have any plant interception missing out on it. So yeah, make sure you're getting your Liberty fogged in there good. In 2024, this is a Purdue University Smart K, which is half of the NKBS that Meristem works with. Dr. Dan Quinn did some trial work for Brandt, and this slide demonstrates one of the other things that we were talking about, how fungicide alone we can get better results and higher yield when we add products like NKBS out of the Meristem program. They have 3 different locations in 2023 and 2024. Basically, they are showing that you can get somewhere between 4 and 6 bushel an acre yield advantage by adding a product like NKBS to that fungicide application. So they're getting lots of positive responses from the fungicide, but when you pair it with a foliar product or a foliar plus a PGR, like what I like to do, we can definitely see yield advancements above and beyond that fungicide application. So you're already going out across the field anyway. You might as well be adding something to that tank to help reduce stress and stop the flow or stop the reassimilation of nutrients in the plant. So those are kind of the things that I wanted to cover as I was going through and trying to find 2025 results, because I always think that the publication that they put out is a class act for sure.
Good. Anything else to add?
Winter annuals I am starting to see a lot of winter annuals. As the snow melted, we've definitely got a lot of rain, 1.5 to 2 inches of rain over the past 2 weeks that we've had here. So we can definitely I can start seeing the winter annuals that are coming out to the chagrin of what we don't like seeing them this time of year, but they're definitely out there. Herbicides, early burn down herbicides are going to be key in order to have clean fields to get rolling into next season.
I'd say specifically where I'm seeing it, unworked or lightly worked corn stubble, and especially on anything with the southward facing kind of hillside, that seems to be where they're really taking, which part of that's just taking advantage of the daylight here as we're in the winter months. But anything that's got a little bit of a south slope and unworked or lightly worked, corn stubble seems to really be the one that's shining through. Part of it a little bit, most guys around my neck of the woods have run some form of a residual product in their burn down on bean stubble. Now that we're getting in a little bit, but corn stubble tends to be the one we try to control mechanically. So if you didn't get that ripped out, or if you didn't do anything at all, definitely keep your eye on that, because that's going to be one that we don't want any competition with that soybean seedling coming through. And it just seems like we can get off to such a great start with soybeans. We don't need to have anything with weed control causing some problems there.
Lighter soil types are where I'm seeing it.
Yep.
So anywhere that's warming up a little bit quicker.
Well, if I'm seeing it, that's all I farm. So
lighter soil types is where I've definitely seen it. So if we're seeing them in the month of December and early January, we know that, in my opinion, it's going to be a March play to get them knocked down to make sure that they aren't impeding planter performance when we're getting ready to rock and roll.
And unfortunately, we've had some conducive conditions to maybe not knock them out, but maybe slow them down a little bit. And what scares me is if we hit a stretch here in the month of January, February, where we get kind of warm, it seems like they take advantage. They wake up, take advantage of that, and by the time that we can potentially get some machinery across it with the ground being a little more stable, they've really got a big jump on us.
Right. Yep. So that's one thing that I have noticed, that be ready, have the equipment and the sprayers ready, or be ready to pull the trigger if you're having a retailer do it. Earlier is always better.
Well, we're off to 2026 for sure. And so I just wanted to let everybody know next week we will do our prediction episode, and we'll tell you how we did last year predicting, and then we'll tell you what we think the key points are for next year in a lot of different topics, and we'll grade ourselves and basically try to set things up for things that you need to watch out for next year. So don't want to miss next week's prediction episode. I'm sure ABC, NBC, and Fox News and everybody will be here to record that one too. So
you gonna wear your Nostradamus costume?
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect.
And don't forget, next week we have our Crop Advantage Series with Iowa State University, where they're coming to Burlington, Iowa, and we're one of the major sponsors. Any of you that are customers of Merschman Seeds, all you got to do is contact Alex here in the office, and we'll make sure you get a ticket in free. To get in free if you're a Merschman Seeds customer. Time for corny jokes, and I'm trying to do better in 2026. One of my resolutions. So just to throw things completely off base, I'm going to tell some jokes about fruit, okay, or fruit or plants, okay? So that makes sense, being a seed business, okay? Why did the tomato go to the ball with a prune? Why did the tomato go to the ball with a prune? Because he couldn't find a date, okay? Okay. What's worse than finding a worm in your apple? What's worse than finding a worm in your apple? Finding half a worm, okay?
Yeah.
All right, now, what do you get when you put an iPhone in a blender? Apple juice. Apple juice, that makes sense. Now, I got a good closer, so stay with me, okay? What made the corn stalk mad at the farmer? What made the corn stalk mad at the farmer? The farmer kept pulling its ears. That would make you mad, you know. Okay, here's the closer. As a kid, you know how much fun it is to go down one of those big long slides, you know. You really enjoyed that. Okay. What fruit likes to go down slides? What fruit likes to go down slides? Kiwi! I knew you'd like it. Anyhow, thanks for watching this week. We sincerely appreciate your business. January 15th is the end of our early cash discounts for this time of year, and financing options are at a good rate right now. So through John Deere Finance. So if you haven't talked to your local Merschman seed dealer, get it done this coming week. And we sincerely appreciate your business. We hope your family is safe and healthy. We'll see you next week.